Thank you. It's so great to see everyone this morning, this afternoon, depending on, again, where you are. My name is Julia Roberts, and I'm the president and CEO of BRAC USA. And I'm thrilled to welcome you to our first of our webinars in 2025. And this webinar is the first in the Extraordinary Women series, where I will interview extraordinary leaders from across BRAC. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank those of you on the call that are with us today. A special thank you and a welcome for those that support and are committed to women and children. Thanks to you and the entire community of dedicated BRAC supporters. We raised nearly $900,000 at the end of last year for women and girls and extraordinary families. So today's webinar is a celebration of our partnership. You are some of the most dedicated members of the BRAC community, and without you, this work is not possible. So on that note, I am thrilled to introduce our distinguished guest today, who will share some of her exciting work and the impact that your giving has been able to achieve. Dr. Erum is the Executive Director of the BRAC Institute of Educational Development, BIED, in Bangladesh. She completed her PhD in education from Cambridge University in 2008. She has extensive experience in scaling education interventions both nationally and globally, and was involved in an expansion of BRAC's unique non-formal primary school model in the 1990s. Since 2008, Erum has supported the evolution of BRAC's education approaches. Under her leadership, BRAC's flagship Play Labs, early childhood approach, and the humanitarian Play Labs have been developed and scaled with much success in promoting children's well-being in diverse and challenging settings. So, Erum, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, wonderful. So Erum and I are just going to have a bit of an informal chat, but I would ask that each of you be thinking of any comments or questions you have, because when we do complete, we want to circle back to you. We look forward to hearing from you. So Erum, this is one of my favorite parts about meeting people at BRAC, but I'd love to hear your BRAC story. What led you to BRAC? And since during your tenure, what has that looked like for you?
Yeah, thanks so much, Julia. So I think, I joined BRAC when I was 26. So that was 33 years ago. I remember that I had gone outside Dhaka and gone to see a program, and I was so impressed by this woman who was facilitating the discussion that I thought that, I had to be in this organization. So then just after what I saw in the field, a very good discussion by a woman facilitator and other women kind of in that discussion. I hadn't seen anything like that in Bangladesh. And I remember going to the BRAC building and handing over my CV. And so later on, I got a call and I was interviewed by the founder, Abid Bhai. And and after the interview, I remember he said, well, come in. And he took me to the HR and he said, why don't you just let's do the HR details and get it all formalized. And why don't you just, join? It was sort of 33 years ago, but it just feels like the other day. And it has been an just unimaginable experience for me. Also, at the age of 26, I got responsibilities which I would, I wouldn't have been able to dream of. When the founder had the meetings and, I was the youngest in the room, but he always remembered to ask me, so Erum, what do you think about this? And so I was really that empowered 26-year-old in BRAC at that time, which really felt like a sense of purpose, and that stayed on.
Oh, that's remarkable. Since you mentioned it, you joined BRAC 3 decades ago. A lot has not changed, right? BRAC's commitment to women and to children, and the focus on women's leadership, like yourself and the women within the programs. Can you share a bit more about the play model and how, though, it has changed over the years?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I mean, the education model, I mean, one of the things, one of the very big features of the education model was that, women were driving the change. It was a one-room school with a woman and, the teacher, and, she was driving the change, and, she was the real change maker in the community. And that was one of the basic features also of the Play Lab model. So, in the Play Lab model, the first features that we thought of was that, it has to be led by a woman who's the play leader. And, she will be kind of creating that environment on play for the children, and she will be the one who will be driving the change. So, I mean, here also, I just, I mean, I have to share here, Julia, that even in those days, I remember the founder, I mean, he kind of thought of really very important policies to involve women. So, he made it a policy that although, kind of it was a sort of master's level sort of for, for staff, but he made that affirmative action that, yes, for women, we will take women who are at undergraduate level in order to be supervisors. There was Kanizapa, my boss, who was a very strong, assertive woman. And, she made sure that the teachers that we were involving, they all gave consent on their own right. There's a story that, one day she asked the staff about that, so, the teachers who are coming into this program, I mean, did we get their consent? And someone said that, yes, Appa, we got the consent. And, the husband gave permission. And she was furious. She blasted everybody in that room. She said, whenever we get teachers, it is the teachers who give consent, no one else. And so from then on, these things kind of, everybody knew about this. So those have absolutely kind of been at the fundamentals of the Play Lab model. So, the Play Lab, of course, is about play and it's about learning through play. But we also have a very important aspect on gender that, so to all the children play together. And, essentially, it is also about how children are very respectful towards each other, through play. And, in the years also, Julia, what happened, we learned that, play is a fabulous thing, for learning, but play is also fabulous for socio-emotional development. And so there, we had, boys also doing pretend play, making kind of food and, like becoming the cook and, in the kitchen and things like that. And girls also, pretend play, doing lots of, play which are kind of non-traditional. So, it was really, I mean, I'm sort of connecting back to the old education NFP model. Again, fundamentals of, women-led, fundamentals of, gender, and also here very much in the Play Lab, child-led. We believed that children have their own, of course, the curiosity, the independence, self-esteem, and confidence. So, children are, children must have the opportunity to play as they wish. So even if we have, kind of storytelling sessions or rhyme sessions, if there are any children who want to go and play in the corner, that we think child-led is very important. So, it's built on a lot of the essentials of the previous model, but we managed to really understand and define play for Bangladesh.
No, I think that's really interesting. And if I can just follow up, on this, I had visited the Play Lab in the Rohingya community and also in Uganda where there's displaced people. That had to bring a new challenge for you as well in sort of how do you, not just, looking at the gender leadership of the Play Labs, but then also looking at how do you make sure that the displaced people are leading their own communities even in these situations. So when you shifted to looking at how to build the program or adapt it for the humanitarian setting. Sort of, I saw some of those practices come to life, but I'd love to hear like what some of that iteration looked like.
Yeah, I mean, the humanitarian was very interesting for us because, we had done the Play Lab, but when we went to the humanitarian setting, we understood that, cultural identities are so important. And so, the cultural exploration, the journey of discovery is extremely important. So basically, when we were in the humanitarian setting with the Rohingya children, we would ask, so what is Rohingya play? I mean, what did you do when you were in Myanmar? So, what are the things that, you played? So they would kind of, they would say their rhymes, which is in a chant. They would tell us about the stories. They would do a lot of physical play. Now, with Rohingya play, which is interesting, is that it's a bit of acrobats, but it's also about balance and coordination. And with the rhymes, it's a lot about chanting. And so we discovered this really exciting indigenous, play. And, there was also art. There were, the approaches to decoration. So
Mhm.
we collected all of that and we put it together because, it was very important for children's cultural identity, like I said, but it's also very important for the children to have a sense of belongingness. And, it resonated very much with Bangladeshis because Bangladeshis, we were also, in a war and kind of, had sort of this genocide in 1970, 71. So, that resonated with us. So this, the model was really developed based on the Rohingya culture of the rhymes, the stories, the art, the physical play, and the decoration. And when we did that, we so understood that, the play as a tool for learning is so important. But what we also did here was we had play as a tool for healing. And
Mhm.
so that was a very big kind of moment for us, because from then on, we said that, wherever we do play and wherever we do early childhood development, it has to be play with mental health, because that is the best combination.
Yes, and actually that's probably a really good segue. One of the issues that we're seeing, in a lot of our work together is the importance and dealing with and approaching mental health and wellness. And it's definitely top of mind, especially in these camps, refugee or displaced people's camps, where people have so often gone through such trauma. Can you share a bit more about how you are integrating the mental health aspects into the program?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, there's a story that, when the children were chanting, their rhymes, in the humanitarian play labs, one day I saw that, people in the community, the grandfather, grandmother, parents, older sibling, they were all really coming near the center. And, on their expression, I saw that, they seemed very, very pleased at what they heard. The children were chanting. And, then later on, I called one of my friends, psychologist friend, and I said, Nargis, this is what happened today in the camp. And she said, Irumappa, don't you realize what happened? The community, they really connected with what they heard and what they saw. And so, when you have this kind of chanting and, the play, uh, you don't heal only the children, you also heal the community.
Mm.
So it was really about, integrating the mental health. But what we did is, in addition to all the cultural discovery, we also had a paracounselor, a woman of the community, trained in psychosocial support, doing empathetic listening, communication, non-judgmental ness, and maintaining confidentiality. And we train para-counselors in the Rohingya camp in order to be there for the children and the mothers and fathers if needed, in addition to everything that we were doing for healing through the cultural interventions. So these were some of the steps that we did to integrate mental health. And this has been a very big development in the whole play model, that now, wherever we do play labs, we've also done play labs in the Rhino camp in Uganda. And there too, we have, women who are play leaders, but also women who are para-counselors trained in psychosocial support.
No, absolutely. I had the benefit of being able to see the paracounselors, in action in both of those settings, and then even outside of refugee settings. And I think, taking the approach that BRAC often does by, taking people at more of a lay worker level or early education, and then really, seeing the value that comes from them coming from the community and seeing that as just as important as the academics that they're bringing to it. It's just that sort of, the shared lived experience that they can bring in resonating and being able to connect to those that they serve. But each time I saw them, it was hard to tell the difference between them and the community because they're so intertwined, right? And that's that level of comfort that you want to see. No, it's
Mhm.
spectacular. Well, another issue that obviously continues to intensify, especially in Bangladesh, is climate change. Last year alone, we saw record setting heat waves, droughts, monsoons, and some of the worst floods that we've seen in decades. How is the BRAC education development thinking about climate change in our work?
Yeah. So I mean, of course, climate change is so important, and Bangladesh, of course, is really kind of at that hotspot for climate change. So I mean, in terms of mental health, we found that we did research and we found that sort of monsoon or heavy rain can have real connotations for people. And we did this study where we found that there have been so much of sort of deprivation at family individual level because of very high monsoon and floods, that every time there are raindrops, it's kind of it's sort of a real fear factor for many individuals in the communities. And so there also we find that the training and the setting of the para counselor is really important.
Mhm.
I'm really sorry, that's my Saint Bernard, and he wants to be in the webinar, as you can see.
I didn't hear him.
So, what's happened is that the para counselors, they are part of the community, but we find in the climate vulnerable areas, what's important is sometimes with kind of every year flooding, monsoon, obviously with sort of so much of natural disasters, there's deprivation, there's loss.
Mhm.
And so, it becomes extremely difficult for people to have hope and to maintain spirit. There's a lot of resilience, but sometimes, the spirit gets really crushed. And so that's the time when the para counselors, they provide the psychosocial support and their consultations. It's like, they are there to, keep the spirit alive. And they being also a part of the community, like you were saying, that really helps. So we found that, in the climate vulnerable regions, when there are para counselors, the sort of families, the individual, women, they really, want to speak to the para counselors. And, they insist that, you have to come to my house, you have to come to my house. And also it's really try to identify the real simple ways of, supporting each other,
Mhm.
and to be there for each other, and the psychosocial support, the consultation, the kind of having someone to listen to. So all of that really helps. And the para counselor model really is about a simple thing. It's about helping people cope, and ensuring that people are functional. So
Mhm.
the claim is not, really high, but, this is something, it's at a very fundamental level. This is exactly what we need.
And are the para counselors linking or equipped with some of the knowledge about climate adaptation or some of the approaches that BRAC is taking to try to support families and communities in climate adaptation? Is that sort of where you focus, sort of channeling information or connection as they're working on the psychosocial issues? Are they also trying to link them to other services or approaches that they could take to become, I guess, more climate resilient?
Yes, I mean, we work very closely with the climate adaptation programs. And so, it is again, what we do is we integrate the component there. And so the mental health component would not be a standalone, but it would be part of the intervention. So all the approaches that the climate adaptation program is taking, the mental health program, the mental health para-counselors would be integrated. So all the families that would be reached anyway, we also ensure that the mental health support also reaches. So it's the integration, but it's a very important value addition.
Absolutely. Erum, you have always been a part of, I think, forging the next, the next horizon, in education at BRAC. And so when you sit back and you have even a moment to think about it, or as you and the team look at it, you're looking at areas in mental health or climate adaptation, but what do you see as on the horizon? What's your next big challenge that you want to tackle or approach?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think that, the founder, he always used to tell us that, that it's so important to be working with the national systems. And so, working with government was always one of, his vision. And so, when we do ECD, mental health, climate work in Bangladesh, we do ECD work in Uganda, Tanzania, Sierra Leone, Philippines. I mean, it's very important for us to be working with government. And, we've had very interesting stories and milestones. Uganda, our colleagues in Uganda managed to have the first play labs absolutely co-located in the government schools. Then in Tanzania, our colleagues, they kind of, they advocated so much. They worked so hard that, the government of Uganda accepted and endorsed the, curriculum for the 0 to 5 in Tanzania. In Bangladesh, we all, BRAC team, education team, all of us, we worked really hard. And, Bangladesh government invited us to develop a pre-primary curriculum for 4 to 6 year olds. So these have been really big milestones, but we continue to be, engaging with government in order to work in partnership with the government, to be able to scale the innovations that we all do.
No, I think that's important. And I think, like you do point out, it BRAC's support for national systems. I mean, often, regardless of what country we're in, governments change, but it's that national ecosystem for education that we're trying to scale through. I had the opportunity to see some of our programs also in Dhaka, where we were, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're joining the government in trying to bring 1 million students back into the school system that might have come out of the primary school system, due to displacement or migration. And got to visit a few of those schools to see students that are coming back in and getting that accelerated program in order to get them back on track and back into the national education system. So I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on that, but I thought getting to see sort of that second chance, right, and knowing that that's part of a larger ecosystem to get children back into a formal process, I thought was quite powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's been such a big accomplishment of BRAC because, when we were doing the non-formal models at that time, the founder's vision was, sort of there can be no children in the community who doesn't attend the school. And so, obviously there'll be some children who are going through the government system, but whoever is left behind has to be addressed by BRAC. And so with that vision, 12 million children, went through the BRAC education system. But then what happened is that, in 2016, the government of Bangladesh, they did all the research and they identified that BRAC's, model was, one of the best second chance models. And so from then on, the government of Bangladesh recognized that, there's sort of, so many children who are still left behind, should go through these kind of second chance models like BRAC and other NGOs. But BRAC's was really kind of regarded as a very good second chance model. So that's the kind of, interventions that we see now that are funded by the government and, in partnership, of course, with NGOs like BRAC. So, it's really a moment of pride for us, Julia, that, the early days of, the sort of model that was developed, the non-formal model, obviously, kind of had so many children go through that, and sort of it has had such transformation in Bangladesh, but also it continues to cater to the needs of so many.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I think, to me, I think it's, and to so many others, it's affecting change at scale and national system. But each of those are made out of successes that grew out of small pilots and iteration, and really affecting change one individual and one community at a time. And so, I mean, you've had both the responsibility and the opportunity to work with thousands of women and community members and children. And so, if we take it back down from scale and national reach at the personal level, I'm sure it's hard. You probably have hundreds of individual stories, but I wonder if you might share just, one or two just personal stories that stood out where you really affected or connected with an individual, a child or a woman across the thousands that you've reached.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few stories. So one is that, I'll just start with the, para counselor. One of the stories is that, with the para counselor's consultation and support, I mean, one of the women, she said that, the para counselor in my area, whenever I talk to her, it seems to me like it feels like a very good curry that I have tasted. And I thought that expression was so interesting because it was something about nourishing and
Yeah.
nourishment. So that seemed a beautiful quote. But to me, at a personal level, I think that, about 3 years ago, I was in a play lab and I met this child, a 4-year-old, and we were really interested to hear about how children articulate their feelings for nature. And this 4-year-old, she was telling me that, I feel really bad if anybody catches little birds. So I said, why? And she said, I feel really bad if anybody catches little birds because, if a little bird is caught, then, the mother bird will be in a lot of pain because she will not have her child. And that seemed so powerful to me. And we kept on collecting the narratives from this 4-year-old as well as others. And because I'm always intrigued by what children have to say. And recently I was in a government school, and government now also very much kind of also followed and had a lot of women teachers. And I was in a government school where the pre-primary teacher was a woman. And I met this 5-year-old girl, and the 5-year-old girl was talking to a 5-year-old boy who was crying. And she basically told the 5-year-old boy that, in life, you have to be doing things on your own. So don't cry for your mom. Be on your own. And,
Wow.
those are some of the quotations I find, so intriguing. Yes, but the last one I'll say is that, we work, of course, with children, but so many times with women, the frontliners, the para counselors. And in the Rohingya setting, I was there about, 6 weeks ago, and I asked, the sort of group of frontliners and Rohingya women as well as the host women. I said, what do you think has been the most visible change in this camp in the last, 8 years, 7, 8 years? Because in 2017, that's the time when the influx started. And they said, it's the courage of women. That seems most visible to us. And I thought, that was really the moment for us.
Wow, that is powerful. Well, thank you for sharing your insights. And I definitely want to turn to those of you on the call. And Erum, Appa, we have one question already that I wanted to ask you. It was posed, what gives you hope for women's education and mental health?
Yeah, in all the years that I've worked, I've found that, the transformation for women has been just, unbelievable. And so, we had women who came in as teachers, And those who came in as teachers, they would say that, oh, we felt so shy, we didn't want to go out of the house. And look at us now. And you see them a few years ago, you see them a few years later on, and they are ready to kind of conduct any training for any number of people. I mean, recently I was talking to a para counselor in the camp, and she said, Appa, I was, providing para counseling to groups, and I don't know how it happened. One day I was also ready to provide training to anybody in Bangladesh. And this courage, I mean, I don't know how, this transformed me. So I have seen women transform and so rapidly. I mean, all the changes in non-formal education with the play labs, with the mental health, I mean, at the center are these women who embrace change, who are so passionate, and they take change forward. So I'm very hopeful because I've seen that.
Well, I would definitely, I would add to that. I think what's interesting, don't have your tenure at BRAC, but since coming, I think one of the most powerful things is noting that, the founder said that, made sort of what we would call a big bet early on, and said if we move people out of poverty, education and health indicators will rise. And I think, we've looked at some of the research, and you and I talked about some of this when we were together, in saying, what does the research tell us? And it really says that when you can move women forward in their families economically, what do they do first? They nourish their families. What do they do second? They send their children to school, and seeing that, like you said, a generation later. And so even as we look at the continuum of programs at BRAC, when we talk to, the people that we work with on, the livelihoods or the economic development, some of their strongest stories of success are when they start talking about sending their kids to primary school, girls and boys, or when they talk about being able to have their children graduate from college. When they came in the program, they might not have ever been able to even save money before. And so I think it's these power dynamics across so many programs that are, sort of propelling education, and with a focus on girls forward.